My best friend's little boy was bleeding out on a hospital bed when the doctor said only one man in the room could save him. He looked straight at my husband and something in my chest went cold before I even understood why. I didn't think affair. I didn't think betrayal. Not then. All I thought was thank God he's here. My name is Carolyn Hayes. I'm 52 years old and up until that day I would have told you I had a good life. Not perfect. Nothing is at our age, but steady, familiar. The kind of life you build. Brick by brick over decades and stop questioning because it's always been there. Mark and I had been married 27 years. Same house in Columbus, Ohio. Same routines. Same people drifting in and out of our lives like seasons that never really changed. Denise Parker was one of those constants. We met in high school, stayed close through marriages, jobs, raising kids. She lived 20 minutes away, but most weekends it felt like she lived with us. Especially the last 7 years. That's when Ethan came along. Her son. 7 years old. Big brown eyes. That half smile he did when he knew he was about to get away with something. He was in my house so often I stopped thinking of him as a guest. Saturday mornings always looked the same. The kitchen window fogged up from the kettle. Pancakes on the griddle. The radio low in the background. Some old country station Mark liked. And Ethan sitting in Mark's chair at the table, legs swinging, talking nonstop about dinosaurs or video games or whatever phase he was in that week. And Mark never once told him to move. I remember noticing that once. Not in a bad way. Just noticing. You're losing your seat. I teased him one morning. Mark just smiled, ruffled Ethan's hair. He can have it. That's the kind of man I thought I married. Denise would laugh, pour herself coffee, lean against the counter like she belonged there. Sometimes she'd stay the night if her husband Greg was out of town again. Construction work kept him gone a lot. It never felt strange. Not back then. We were comfortable. That's the word. Comfortable enough that you stop asking questions. The day everything broke started like any other. Quiet. Predictable. Until my phone rang. It was Denise. I still remember the sound of her voice. Not words at first. Just panic. Breathing too fast like she couldn't catch it. Carolyn, Ethan, there's been an accident. The rest came out in pieces. Bike. A car. Blood. Ambulance. I didn't even grab my purse properly. Just keys. Shoes half on. Mark was already moving before I finished the sentence. We drove in silence. Fast. Too fast. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and something metallic underneath it. Fear maybe. That's what it felt like. Denise was in the hallway outside the ER pacing like she might wear a hole into the floor. Her hands were shaking so bad she couldn't even hold her phone steady. When she saw us she grabbed my arms hard. He lost so much blood, she said. They need, she couldn't finish. A doctor came out. Mid-40s. Tired eyes. The kind of calm that isn't really calm. Just practiced. Are you family? He asked. I'm his mother. Denise said quickly. This is, she hesitated for half a second. This is my friend and her husband. The doctor nodded, already scanning a chart. Your son has a very rare blood type, he said. We're checking our supply, but it's limited. We need a match immediately. Everything in me tightened, but it was focused. Practical. What do we do? Who do we call? Then the doctor looked up. At Mark. It wasn't dramatic. No music cue. No sudden realization. Just a look that lingered a second too long. Sir, he said. What's your blood type? Mark answered. Calm. Steady. Like this was just another problem to solve. The doctor's expression shifted. Subtle, but I saw it. We should test you right away, he said. You might be a match. And in that moment I felt relief flood through me so hard my knees almost gave out. Thank God. I whispered. Because that's all it was to me. A miracle. A coincidence. A lucky break on the worst day of a child's life. I turned to Denise expecting to see the same relief. But she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at Mark. And there was something in her face I couldn't quite place. Not just fear. Not just desperation. Something tighter. More controlled. Like she was holding something in. Her hands were clenched so hard her knuckles had gone white. Please, she said to him quietly. Please. It sounded less like a request and more like something she'd been waiting to say. I told myself I was imagining it. Of course I did. When you've built your life around people you don't tear it apart over a feeling you can't explain. So I stood there. I waited. I prayed. And I didn't ask a single question. Not yet. The doctor didn't rush. That's what I remember most. Not panic. Not urgency. Just this careful measured pace like he was choosing every word before it left his mouth. He came back out about 20 minutes later. Mark had already been taken for testing. Denise and I were alone in the hallway sitting side by side, but not really together. My hands were clasped so tight in my lap they'd started to ache. The doctor stopped in front of us. Looked at Denise first. Then at me. Then just for a second down at the floor. It was small. Most people wouldn't have noticed. I did. Well? Denise asked her. Voice barely holding together. He exhaled slowly. Your son's blood type is extremely rare, he said. We've confirmed that. I nodded like I already knew that part. Like I was following along. And your husband, he glanced at me briefly. Is a match. Relief hit me again. Sharp. Immediate. Oh, thank God. I said. I didn't even realize I'd said it out loud. Denise didn't react. Not the way I expected. She didn't cry. Didn't sag with relief. Didn't grab me. She just closed her eyes for a second. Tight. Then nodded once. Okay, she said. Okay. The doctor didn't move. That's when something shifted. There's one thing, he added. He hesitated again. That same pause. I felt it this time. Like a drop in pressure before a storm. What is it? I asked. He looked between us. Careful. This level of compatibility is unusual, he said. I blinked. Unusual how? He gave a small professional shrug. In cases like this we typically see this kind of match between close biological relatives. I let out a short laugh before I could stop myself. Well, that's lucky then. I said. Right. The words sounded thin the second they left my mouth. The doctor didn't smile. He just nodded once. We'll proceed with the transfusion immediately. And then he was gone. Just like that. I sat there staring at the space where he'd been. Close biological relatives. My brain rejected it immediately. No. I said under my breath, more to myself than anyone. Denise shifted beside me. I felt it even without looking. It doesn't mean anything. I added quickly. Right. I mean, it's just science. Probabilities. Coincidences happen. I turned to her waiting for agreement. She didn't meet my eyes. She was staring straight ahead, jaw tight. Denise. She swallowed. They need to save him. She said. That's not what I asked. She finally looked at me then. And for the first time in over 30 years of knowing her, I didn't recognize the look on her face. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. It was something quieter. Like she was already bracing for impact. I felt something cold slide through my chest. No. I said again, firmer this time. No, that's not. Mark came back into the hallway just then. A nurse walking beside him. They're prepping, he said, like we were discussing a routine appointment. It'll take a little while. He looked at Denise. Then at me. Calm. Steady. The same man I'd driven here with. Nothing in his face gave anything away. How is he? He asked. Denise nodded quickly. They're working on him. Good. Mark said. He sat down across from us, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. For a few seconds no one spoke. I kept waiting for one of them to say something. Anything. Explain it. Dismiss it. Laugh it off. But the silence stretched. And stretched. Until it started to feel wrong. I cleared my throat. The doctor said something strange. I said. Mark looked up at me. Yeah? He said the match was unusual. Mark's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. Is that bad? He asked. No. Just I hesitated. He said it usually happens between relatives. Mark gave a short nod. Huh. That was it. Huh. Like I'd commented on the weather. I stared at him. You don't think that's odd? I pressed. He shrugged slightly. It's blood types, Carolyn. I'm sure there's a range. A range. Right. Of course. That made sense. It had to make sense. I nodded slowly, forcing myself to accept it. Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. Denise didn't say a word. The nurse came back then and told us they were starting the transfusion. Mark stood up immediately. I'll be in there, he said. Denise reached for his arm as he passed. Just for a second. Her fingers tightened around his sleeve. Thank you, she whispered. It sounded too heavy for the moment. Too loaded. Mark just nodded and kept walking. I watched them. Both of them. And something deep inside me. Something quiet but steady shifted. I didn't have proof. I didn't have answers. But I had a feeling I couldn't shake. The kind that sits in your gut and waits. Hours passed. Ethan made it through. The doctor told us he was stable, that the transfusion worked. Everyone cried then. Even me, because no matter what else was happening, that little boy was alive. And that mattered. It should have been enough. But later that night, after everything settled, after Denise finally went in to sit with Ethan, I stepped out into the hallway to get some air. And that's when I heard them. Their voices were low, urgent, around the corner, just out of sight. We can't let her find out. Denise was saying. There was a pause. Then Mark. Not like this. He said quietly. Not after all these years. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The world didn't crash down. It didn't shatter. It just went still. And in that stillness, I understood something I couldn't ununderstand. This wasn't a coincidence. It never was. I didn't confront them that night. I wish I could tell you I did, that I stormed around that corner, demanded answers, forced the truth out right there in that hospital hallway. But I didn't. I stood there. Quiet. Listening to the echo of their voices fade. And then I walked the other way like I hadn't heard a thing. Because at 52, you don't blow up your life on a single moment. You confirm it. You need to. That's the part people don't talk about. The waiting, the second guessing, the way your mind tries to protect you by offering easier explanations. Maybe I misheard. Maybe it meant something else. Maybe I was tired. So I went home the next morning, alone. Mark stayed at the hospital overnight, said Denise needed help, said Ethan might wake up scared. I nodded. Of course he did. That's what a good man would do. I made coffee I didn't drink, sat at the kitchen table, stared at the chair Ethan always sat in. Mark's chair. I ran my hand along the back of it. Smooth wood, familiar. Then I stood up. And I started looking. Not dramatically, not like some detective show, just small things. I opened my laptop, logged into Facebook, scrolled back. Years of pictures, birthdays, holidays, barbecues in the backyard. Ethan in almost all of them. I started paying attention to the backgrounds. Where people were standing, what was behind them. That's when I noticed the chair. It was in one of Denise's photos. A picture she'd posted about 2 years ago, Ethan opening Christmas gifts in her living room. Behind him, slightly out of focus, was a brown leather armchair. I stared at it for a long time. Because I knew that chair. Mark bought it 5 years ago, said it was for his office, something comfortable. Except I'd never seen it in his office. I'd asked once. Where'd that chair go? He shrugged. Returned it. Didn't like it. I believed him. I believed a lot of things. I zoomed in on the photo. My hands were steady, too steady. Same stitching, same worn mark on the arm. It was the same chair. I leaned back slowly. Okay. I said out loud to the empty room. Just one piece. Could still be nothing. I kept going. Emails next. Mark's work account was still logged in on the home computer. He never logged out, never thought he needed to. Why would he? I searched for travel confirmations. There were more than I expected. Trips to a small town about an hour and a half outside Columbus. Not Cleveland, not Cincinnati, somewhere I'd barely heard of. I pulled up Denise's old posts again, scrolled to the same dates. Visiting my mom this weekend. One caption said. Same weekend. Another trip. Another visiting mom. Same town. My stomach tightened, but I kept going. Piece by piece. Like a puzzle you don't want to finish. Around noon, I found it. A photo Denise had posted years ago and then deleted. But not completely. It was still saved in a shared album we'd both contributed to. I clicked it. A cabin. Wooden, cozy. Snow outside the window. Denise standing in the center, holding a mug, smiling at the camera. And behind her, Mark. Not just standing. Close. His hand resting lightly on her waist like it belonged there. Like it had always been there. I stared at that picture until my eyes burned. 7 years. 7 years of this. 7 years of weekends, dinners, holidays, sleepovers. 7 years of me setting an extra plate at the table. I closed the laptop. Sat there in silence. Part of me still wanted to deny it. To come up with something, anything that made it less ugly. So when Mark came home that evening, I gave him the chance. He walked in like nothing had changed, dropped his keys on the counter, loosened his tie. How's Ethan? I asked. Stable. He said. They're keeping him a few more days. That's good. A pause. Then I said it. I went through your emails today. He froze for just a second, then turned slow. Why would you do that? I held his gaze. Because something doesn't add up. He let out a breath, shook his head. Carolyn? Those trips. I said. That town, Denise's posts, the chair. His jaw tightened. You're connecting things that don't, is he yours? The question hung there between us. Heavy, solid. Mark didn't answer right away. He looked at me like I'd just insulted him. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Are you serious right now? Yes. This is because of what the doctor said. He scoffed. You're letting that get into your head. I heard you in the hallway. That stopped him. Just for a second. Then he recovered. You heard what you wanted to hear. He said. You're stressed. You haven't slept. You're making this into something it's not. My chest tightened. Because part of me, some small stupid part, wanted to believe him. You're being paranoid, Carolyn. He added softer now. This isn't you. There it was. The shift. Not denial. Control. I stared at him. I almost believed you. I said quietly. He didn't respond. Didn't have to. We both knew. I nodded once. Okay. I said. And just like that, I stopped asking. Not because I didn't want the truth. But because I already had enough of it. I wasn't going to fight him for it. I was going to make him face it. On my terms. Ethan was discharged 3 days later. By then, everything had settled on the surface. The doctors were satisfied. Denise was smiling again, thinner somehow, like something had been wrung out of her. Mark acted exactly like you'd expect a man who had just saved a child. Calm, helpful, quietly proud. If you didn't know better, you'd admire him. Denise called me that evening. I want to do something, she said. Just a small dinner to thank Mark for everything. Her voice was careful, too careful. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the spot where Ethan used to sit. That sounds nice, I said. And I meant it. It would be nice. For me. I'll host. I added before she could offer. There was a pause. Are you sure? She asked. Yes. I said simply. It's the least I can do. Another pause. Then okay. I planned it like any other gathering we'd had over the years. Same people, same menu, same house. Only this time every detail mattered. I invited the neighbors, a couple of Mark's coworkers, 2 of Denise's friends, and Greg, her husband. He hesitated when I called. Everything okay? He asked. Denise said it was just a thank you thing. It is. I said. You should come. Something in my voice must have convinced him. All right. He said. Saturday evening came. The house smelled like roast chicken and garlic. Glasses clinked. People laughed. Normal. Almost. Ethan sat on the couch with a blanket over his legs, pale but smiling. Mark checked on him more than anyone else. Kneeling down, adjusting the blanket, asking if he needed anything. It would have looked sweet if I didn't know. Denise hovered nearby, watching, always watching. Greg stood off to the side most of the night, beer in hand, looking like a man who felt slightly out of place in his own life. I moved through the room, refilling drinks, clearing plates, smiling when I needed to. Waiting. At some point, someone tapped a glass. Hey. One of Mark's coworkers said, grinning. We should probably say something, right? The guy saved a kid's life. A few people chuckled. Nods all around. Mark waved it off. It's nothing. Come on. Denise said quickly. It's not nothing. Her voice caught just a little. All eyes turned to Mark. He stood up slowly, adjusted his shirt like he'd done 100 times before giving a speech at work or a family event. "All right," he said with a small smile. "I guess I'll say a few words." I stepped back, leaned against the wall, watched. He talked about being in the right place at the right time, about how lucky it was that everything worked out, about Ethan being a strong kid. The room softened around him. People smiled. Someone clapped him on the back when he finished. A hero. That's what they saw. I let the silence settle after the applause faded. Then I pushed myself off the wall. "Actually," I said, my voice calm, steady, "there's something I'd like to add." The room quieted as Mark looked at me, just briefly. Denise didn't look at me at all. I walked to the center of the room holding a simple white envelope. Nothing dramatic about it. "Denise," I said gently. She stiffened. "Why don't you come up here?" Her head snapped up. "What?" "Come here," I repeated, still calm, "please." People shifted, sensing something had changed, even if they didn't know what. Denise stood slowly. Every step toward me looked like it cost her something. When she reached me, I handed her the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she took it. "What is this?" she whispered. I met her eyes. "You've kept it quiet long enough," I said. A murmur moved through the room. Mark stepped forward. "Carolyn, what are you?" "Let her read it," I said, not raising my voice. He stopped. Denise stared at the envelope like it might disappear if she didn't open it. But it didn't. Nothing was disappearing anymore. "Go ahead," I said softly. She opened it. Pulled out the paper inside. Her eyes scanned the first line. Then the second. Her face drained of color. "Denise," Greg said from across the room, his voice tightening. "What is it?" She didn't answer. Her hand dropped slightly, the paper shaking. I took a small step forward. "Read it," I said. A tear slipped down her cheek. "No," she whispered. "Yes," I said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room had gone completely still. Finally, her voice broke through it. It's a DNA test," she said, barely audible. Greg frowned. "A what?" Denise swallowed hard. "It says." She stopped, shook her head. "I can't." I stepped beside her, not touching, just close enough. "Then I will." I looked out at the room, at the faces that had filled my home for years, at my husband, at my best friend, and I said it as simply as I could. "He's not just a match," I said. A pause. "He's his father." No one spoke. No one moved. The words didn't explode. They didn't crash. They just settled. Heavy. Final. Greg stared at Denise like he'd never seen her before. Mark opened his mouth, closed it again. For once in his life, he had nothing to say. Denise started crying, quiet at first, then harder. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, shaking her head. "It was years ago." 7, I said. She flinched. Greg let out a sound I'd never heard from a grown man before. Not anger, not exactly. Something deeper. Then he turned and walked out the front door without another word. No one stopped him. No one said anything. Because what was there to say? I stood there in the middle of it all. Not yelling. Not shaking. Just done. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't guessing. I wasn't doubting. I wasn't being told I was wrong. The truth was out. And they had nowhere left to hide. The house felt different the next morning. Same walls, same furniture, same light coming through the kitchen window. But the silence. It wasn't the same silence I'd lived with for years. The kind you fill with background noise, small talk, routine. This one was clean. Sharp. Like something had been cut out. Mark didn't come home that night. He sent a text, short. I'll stay at a hotel. We need to talk later. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say. I woke up early anyway. Habit. Made coffee. Stood at the counter for a while just holding the mug, feeling the warmth in my hands. No kettle whistling over someone else's voice. No footsteps coming down the hallway. No child asking what was for breakfast. Just me. I walked into the living room slowly. Everything was exactly where it had been during the party. A glass left on the side table. A folded blanket on the couch where Ethan had sat. I picked it up, ran my hand over the fabric. Then I set it aside. One thing at a time. That's how you survive something like this. You don't fix your whole life in a day. You just start. The locksmith came around 10. Nice man, mid-60s, talkative in that easy way older folks have when they've seen enough not to rush anything. Changing all the locks, he asked, glancing around. Yes, I said. He nodded like he understood more than I'd told him. Good idea, he said simply. I watched him work for a while. The quiet clicking of tools. The steady rhythm. It felt grounding. Like putting a boundary back where it should have always been. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. I wrote down everything. House mine. It had always been in my name. One of the few decisions I'd insisted on early in the marriage. Mark used to joke about it. Guess I'm just living in your place, he'd say. Funny the things that come back to you. Accounts, savings, bills. I knew all of it. I'd always handled the practical side of things. That part of my life didn't fall apart. Just the people in it. The lawyer appointment was set by noon. No drama, no drawn-out arguments. I wasn't interested in a fight. I was interested in being finished. Mark called once that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. Then again later. Same result. The third time I picked up. Carolyn, he said, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I didn't answer. I don't even know where to start, he continued. Then don't, I said. A pause. I never meant for you to find out like that, he said. I let out a small breath. Not quite a laugh. There wasn't a way I was supposed to find out, Mark. That's not what it doesn't matter, I cut in. It's done. Silence on the other end. Then softer. What happens now? I looked around the house, at the life we'd built, at the empty spaces I hadn't noticed before. I filed, I said, this morning. Another pause, longer this time. You're serious. I've been serious for a while. I just didn't know it yet. He exhaled slowly. I want to see Ethan, he said after a moment. That's between you and Denise, I replied. He's your son. The word hung there. Son. Real, unavoidable. Mark didn't argue. Didn't apologize again. He just said, okay. And that was the last real conversation we had. Denise didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't come by. She disappeared from my life as quietly as she'd entered it all those years ago. Greg never reached out either. I didn't blame him. Some things don't need words. A few days later, I went back into the living room. Stood in front of that chair. The brown leather one. The one that had never been mine. I called a resale place that afternoon. Pick up tomorrow, the woman asked. Yes, I said. Condition? Used, I replied, but still intact. She laughed lightly. That's the best kind. I didn't explain what I meant when I said it. The next day, they came and took it away. Just like that. One less thing in the house that didn't belong to me. Weeks passed. Paperwork, meetings, quiet evenings. Some nights were harder than others. I won't pretend they weren't. You don't erase 27 years like it's nothing. There were moments I'd reach for my phone to tell Mark something. A story, a memory, a habit. Then I'd stop. Remind myself that life was over. And that was okay. One morning, about a month later, I booked a flight. Florida. Nothing fancy. Just a small place by the water. I hadn't traveled alone in decades. Didn't even know if I'd like it. But I went anyway. The first morning there, I woke up early. Walked down to the beach before the sun fully came up. There weren't many people around. Just a few early walkers. The sound of waves coming in slow and steady. I sat down in the sand. Pulled my jacket tighter around me. And for the first time in a long time, I took a full breath. No second guessing. No tension sitting under everything. Just air. Just quiet. Just me. I stayed there until the sun came up over the water. Didn't rush it. Didn't need to. Because I finally understood something simple. The truth doesn't break you. Living without it does. If something in your life feels off, don't ignore it. I did, for years. And it cost me more than I realized. But walking away, that gave me everything back.